Okay, we're going to look at the binomial expansion for this video here. So when we're doing the binomial expansion and we're making sure that we don't drop any marks, there are a couple things that we need to be aware of. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our power and we're going to decide on the best course forward. So in the formula booklet, it states that something of the form 1 plus x to the power of n, where n is a real number, can be approximated by a result that goes as follows: 1 plus nx plus n minus 1 over 2x squared, and so on. Now, when we have a fractional, okay, so when we have a fraction or a negative, we want to be using what would be familiar to you from year 2 pure, which is the result as follows. And there's a couple things to be aware of. First of all, the bracket must have sort of in one of the positions positive 1, which we have here. So that's a good sign. If we didn't have to do this, if it didn't do this, we would have to do some work beforehand. The thing that's less obvious is what is sitting here is referred to as x each time. Now, it's not the same as that x there. That's not how this formula sort of works. The idea is that this bit here is every mention of x. So I'm going to show you how you can really methodically get a very quick answer, also using the calculator to speed this up to make sure you don't drop any marks on this question. So we're going to write 1 minus 8x to the power of a half. And the first thing we're going to do is, well, once we've checked the initial steps, we're going to write down our n value. So our n value means the power, which is a half. And we're going to write down what I call kind of the x with inverted commas. So what I mean here is what goes with the positive 1, which is minus 8x. You're going to see why that's a useful way to do it in just a moment. Now, approximately, it's equal to how many terms? The first 4 terms. So it's approximately equal to 1 plus nx plus n, the number below it, over 2 factorial x squared. So this is Edexcel advice. When you're going to substitute into a formula, you should state that formula first. It can sometimes help you pick up some method marks. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 4 terms. Please only do the terms that you actually need. Now, let's keep this going. So 1 plus, I'm now going to put lots and lots and lots of brackets in. So nx, for example, okay, I'm going to write like this. This one, it's up to you how far you want to take this. You know, you can really go overboard with the minus 1. I'm going to just sort of do it like this. 2 factorial, it's just 2. Brackets squared, that's probably the single most important thing to do. Keep an eye on that in a moment. Okay, plus bracket, bracket, bracket. 3 factorial means 3 times 2 times 1. It's 6. Okay, and finally, bracket cubed. I'm doing all of this because I'm not going to leave the brackets empty, and it's just going to make sure that I don't forget anything. So what we're going to do now is n, we're going to fill in all the n values and n minus 1s and so on. So that's a half. That's a half. N minus 1 means 1 below, so that's a minus a half. A half. There's that minus a half again. Minus a half. And this one here, a minus 3 over 2. So those are all my n values. Now all my sort of x values. So what was it? It was minus 8x. So minus 8. It's often quite good, actually, to write the x on the outside here. Okay, I'll show you why in a moment. So minus 8. Again, this will be minus 8x. But you already know that that's going to be an x squared term. So I'm going to write the x squared on the outside. Minus 8 here. And again, I'm going to write the x cubed on the outside. Now, why am I doing all of that? Well, the reason why I'm doing that, clearly, you know, when we simplify, this is a 1, for example, and this is a very, very quick calculation. You know, it's minus 4x. But When you start getting to this point here, it starts taking quite a long time and you have to really be quite careful. Well, if you write it exactly as it appears here and you press equals on your calculator, well, it will give you, won't it? It will give you a simplified fraction. So rather than me now sit here and say a half times minus a half over 2 minus 8 squared, yeah, that's positive 64, okay? Well, I'm just going to get the calculator to do all of this one for me so I can leave my brain power for some more difficult tasks. It gets even worse, doesn't it, over here? Okay, so I'm using the fact that if I write it correctly, I'm going to be able to get my answer from that, okay? And, you know, when I do all of that, that should just take me straight to these values here, okay? So I want the working out, but then I'm just going to write the answer mark underneath. So it was minus x squared, just for completeness, let's write it in. It was minus x squared, and it was minus 32x cubed. Okay, so that is writing it in ascending powers. That means going up to give the first 4 terms, and simplest form. Again, simplest form is achieved by using the calculator the vast majority of the time. So that's the main question really, and that's about 3 or 4 marks. So if you practice that, you can do that very, very quickly. Part B, explain why an eighth should not be used if you want to approximate this. So if you go back to the formula booklet again, where you sort of have this part here, you'll also see that they will state this condition. They will say the modulus of x. When they say the modulus of x, again, they mean this x, okay? The modulus of x is less than 1 is a condition of this. So what we do is we write in what is equivalently rx, and I could write in minus 8x, but I can actually just, because it's the modulus, I can ignore that. I could just write this in, and I can divide both sides by 8, and I get this condition. So this is a condition for part B for my expansion to work. I need a value less than an eighth. So why should you not use x equals an eighth? Well, I can support it, and I should say the expansion only works with values less than an eighth, or where the absolute value is less than an eighth. You know, for example, what could we say? 100th is okay, minus 100th is okay, but you cannot use the value of an eighth. Okay, so we're now then going to just practice this one more time, and I'm going to change the question slightly just to make it a bit harder. So instead, let's use the power of minus a half. So how do we do it? Well, we check that we have a 1, we check the power, then we start listing our terms. N's minus a half. What's taking the position of x in the formula is now minus 2x. How many terms? Up to and including x squared. So you'll find that this will be 3 terms. So it's approximately equal to 1 plus nx plus n minus 1 over 2 factorial, or you could even just write a 2 there, x squared. Now, with the brackets, bracket, you know, what I meant earlier, by the way, if you're wondering what I meant in the previous section, is I'm saying that you could even do this if you want, but I think that's a little bit over the top. So n minus 1 will go there, that will be a 2. Let's put the x value squared, and then let's put our x squared here and our x and so on. So n's minus a half, so that's a minus a half. That's a minus a half. This is a minus 3 over 2. And sort of the remaining part of the minus 2x, I'm going to write it like this. Okay, so again, this one can now be taken care of by your calculator that will make very light work of this. You know, this one, I suppose you could just work this one out. It's probably taking longer if you actually use your calculator. Double negative means what? It means it's positive, okay, and that's just plus x. This one over here, okay, you know, really is what I'm talking about. I would just use a calculator. Save your time and effort for the questions where they say you must use an algebraic method. So hopefully now you feel like you can make sure that you also drop no marks when it comes to this really, really common exam question.